Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you here. This is our second presentation of our Writing is Thinking series for the Reading League Vermont. I'm Brenda Warren. I'm president of the Reading League Vermont. And I just have one request before I introduce the speaker, and that's if you could refrain from using the chat I'll rephrase that. If you could just use the chat for specific questions, whether it's for Abby and I, Abby is the vice president, or if you have questions for the speaker, Dr. Wijekumar will be leaving time to answer questions at the end. So I will introduce Dr. K. Wijekumar. She's the director at the Center for Urban Schools Partnership and principal investigator for the CAT framework, which is Knowledge Acquisition Transformation Method. She's at the Texas A&M University. The CAT framework improves critical reading skills by focusing on text structures, which I know if you were here yesterday, Dr. Laud talked about text structures being very important. She also serves as the project director for literacy.io, which is a website that offers resources and professional development for educators. She is speaking today on supporting writing through the knowledge acquisition and transformation framework. And I will turn it over to Kay. We're very excited to have her here today.
Thank you so much, Brenda and team in Vermont for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here. I love all the chapters of the Reading League, and I also love the Reading League in general. We just ran a huge professional development for the Reading League last week. Oh, it's a week ago now. But it's very, very nice to be here. I'm going to share my screen in a second here, and then we will get started. As soon as all right. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you about supporting writing using through the knowledge acquisition and transformation framework. Because I learned everything from Steve Graham and Karen Harris about writing, the people who developed and refined the SRSD framework. And so I buy into the thinking that reading and writing are very highly interconnected. They're one and the same, right? Your readers read what writers write, and writers write for readers to read. So for that reason, I am framing it like this, where the knowledge acquisition and transformation framework has primarily been used for reading, but we have also found really strong improvements in writing. So as Brenda introduced me, I work at Texas A&M. I spent 36 years in Penn State before I came to Texas A&M. I'm very familiar with the workings of schools across the country. I served on the school board at Quaker Valley School District in Pennsylvania for 2 terms before I left Pennsylvania to come to Texas. I have no intention of going back on any school board, but I just wanted to give you that those are some of my street creds, so to speak, because you know how school boards work. I also want to acknowledge that all of the funding that went into developing and refining this framework that has been very successful came from the U.S. Department of Education. In fact, we are currently operating under 3 grants from the U.S. Department of Education, one for CAT at the elementary level, one brand new one for CAT at the middle grade level, and also something called PRISM, which is for science integrated into literacy. So we have funding, and all of that came from the U.S. Department of Education, for which I'm eternally grateful. And I also like to always state that we have put taxpayer dollars to the best use possible, which is to help children read and write. What more could we want, right? As parents, as community members, if we can get literacy in the hands of every single child, that will make an enormous difference for our futures going forward. All right, so I'm going to share with you what the CRACK framework is, just to bring everybody onto the same page, so to speak. You might have heard me in speaking in different venues, including the Reading League meetings, but I just wanted everybody to be on the same page. And then I want to share how this reading and writing connection works, because readers read what writers write. and then reading and writing with the CAT framework. And then finally, I want to highlight a little bit about how you can use CAT to respond to short constructed responses, which happens to be used in every state in their state level assessments, and also as exit tickets as students leave the classroom, or as homework activities, so that you can gather information about the student's ability to correctly and accurately and precisely, efficiently answer short questions in writing. And then I'm going to leave room for questions and reflections from your side. I'm happy to answer questions from y'all. And I also want to highlight that all of the work that I'm presenting to you today is coming directly from classrooms at the elementary, middle, and high school levels, where these methods are in play every single day and are used by teachers very efficiently and effectively to build comprehension and to improve writing at the same time. The CAT framework was developed over multiple years. I have been refining it since the year 2001. But before that, Bonnie Meyer, back in 1971, explained that text structures are an organizational tool that writers use to convey a message when they're writing. So they leave clues for the reader to take advantage of if they're going to read something and pay attention to what's happening in the text. So this text structure, the way she organized it, was cause and effect, problem and solution, comparison, and sequence and description. Those were the five that she identified back in 1971, 55 years ago. And what she stated all along was that if you understood what the author was organizing the passage as, then you can take advantage of it to also make a memory of the text using that top level structure. So Shakespeare might organize a story as a cause, a problem, and a solution. And what you could do is, as you're reading, you're looking for, was there a problem? Why did it happen? How was it solved? And in your memory, now you reconnect these important information using these logical connections. And throughout this time, there have been thousands of research studies conducted, not only by Bonnie and her team, but also by a lady by the name of Joanna Williams at Columbia University, and many other researchers who have studied this very effectively and shown that if you are able to pay attention to what the author put in as clues to you, some people call them signal words, some people call them organizational structures, whatever it might be, then the reader is able to generate main ideas in their head, create summarizations of the text, and be able to create long-term memory that is very highly structured, systematic, and efficient. So it is not possible to read and memorize all the text. Right? That's what children in elementary grade, low elementary grade levels do. Unfortunately, poor readers, even at advanced levels, try that, where they try to memorize everything. That's just not practical and will never work with larger, bigger texts, and also not in your science class, your social studies class, your AP World History. It's just not possible to read and memorize everything. And if you are trying to do that, you have created very inefficient memory structures of what you're reading, because everything will start with once upon a time, and then you just keep going down this, and then you forget half of the information. It's not organized logically to pull information out. You can't tell what is more important from what is less important, and that poses a huge problem for comprehension. So, what we have done now is to actually build the software and also the research that goes right along with this knowledge acquisition transformation framework, where we show children first how to understand the vocabulary, next, how to identify that top level structure I agree that there are nested structures. There might be sequence nested inside a cause and effect. There might be description nested inside a problem and a solution. But there is an overarching top level structure. And once you have established that, then you immediately go after writing a main idea and encoding it in your long-term memory. And once that's done, you are also able to extend this main idea to a summary and finally fill in missing information by conducting or doing inferencing. We are featured in the What Works Clearinghouse for the evidence that we have provided through large-scale randomized control trials that have proven this to be extremely effective. So we've also got a practitioner piece in the Reading Teacher Journal, which is called What's the Main Idea? So I just wanted to highlight that. So what are the 6 steps of the CAT framework? We pre-teach vocabulary. That means we use the words in context. Not every single word has to be taught, but what we try to do is teach important words that are necessary for the student to understand the main idea and the summary. And then we give the student simple definitions that make sense for that child's reading levels. We also sometimes teach morphology, affixes, root words, and so on, if they are present in that word. And then we present synonyms and antonyms. So this is a very simple, quick pre-teaching of vocabulary. And what this does is it helps make it very explicit to children who do not understand the words, uh, children who might have a reading problem, or maybe children who are English learners may have to see it and understand whether they're a cognate and so on. But it helps children, all types of children, because the English language is the only one where you have multiple meaning words where, depending on the context, the meaning changes. And those things are very troublesome for students who have difficulty in reading. So we pre-teach about a handful of 3 to 5 vocabulary words from any passage that they're reading. And then we read with prosody. So as we're reading, we're not just in a monotone voice, just reading along. Instead, we stop, we annotate, we kind of embellish a little bit, or you can actually do silent reading or partner reading if the children are capable of doing that. One of the things about reading or listening is that if you have children with dyslexia, for example, they absolutely must have grade level passages read aloud to them because they can still apply and use comprehension strategies. As my friend Malt says, just because they have dyslexia doesn't mean you turn it into dysthesia, where you actually can practice comprehension passages with them and comprehension strategies with them by listening and comprehending. So we choose an appropriate reading method for the students and we read aloud or we let them read independently. But immediately after the reading is finished, you classify the text structure. And so this is that top level structure. So it might be that if you ask the children to read about Cinderella, they might say, well, she lost her shoe. Well, yes, that's a problem. But what is the bigger problem in the story? Oh, yes, she's getting bullied by her stepfamily. Okay, why is she getting bullied by her stepfamily? Oh, because they're jealous of her. So now we have a cause for the problem. And so we start scaffolding and asking the child to pay attention to what's happening in the passage using this top level structure. And what that does is it allows the student to have a good frame of reference in which they are going to organize their brain and the logical organization. And once that logical organization is established, the next step is to take the sentence stems that are associated with that text structure. Cause and effect means the cause is, the effect is. Problem and solution means the problem is and the solution is. And so it's very closely tied and it makes it very easy for the student to write a main idea. And so this is the beginning of their very good long-term memory of the text. And it also is the beginning of the writing process, where you have established what the main idea is through these sentence stems. It reduces the cognitive load for the children, and it helps them write the main idea and store it in long-term memory. Then we immediately take the child. So by the way, this entire routine takes 15 to 20 minutes or less at the beginning of the ELA period. When we apply the CAT framework in the classroom, we apply this CAT framework with whatever textbooks you're using. So if you're using HMH, then you apply this 15 to 20 minute routine for your reading passage for the day. You applied for the chapter that you're reading from your chapter book. Whatever you are doing, you apply this up front and set the stage for comprehension and for writing to happen. So the next step after writing the main idea is to add supporting evidence for each part of it. So if it is Cinderella and she was having a problem of getting bullied, you provide evidence from the text or an example from the text. Or her stepfamily makes her clean the room over and over again. They will not let her go to the ball. So these are examples from the text that you can provide as evidence to extend that main idea to a summary. So the summarization process is closely tied to the main idea. What that is doing is presenting an opportunity for the child to create associations in their brain from the main idea to supporting details. So they're able to make associative nets inside their brain about the story that they're reading without having to retell it from beginning to end. On the writing side of things, it also presents the same practice that one needs to do when you write something. You don't just make a statement, you have to back it up with evidence or provide some supporting information for it. So this is where it starts to come together to connect both the reading and the writing. And then last but not least, you extrapolate inferences where you take something like that and you infer author's purpose. For example, why do you think the author wrote this book for Cinderella, about Cinderella? So you could make inferences about unstated information. You could make inferences about how that applies to other situations. You could bring local context to that, and so on and so forth. So what this does is also apply the knowledge in context, gives you an opportunity to expand beyond the directly stated information in the text. And as you and I know that it's not possible to put everything in writing, then every book is going to be 1,000 pages long. So we present information and then we let the reader make inferences to fill in the gaps. Now, one thing about inferences is that depending on your background knowledge, everything could be an inference if you don't have any background about it, or nothing could be an inference because everything you know quite a bit about. So for that reason, lots of people out there now want to keep teaching background knowledge, which I think is that's a whole different conversation. Okay, Brenda can invite me back for that for another day. But so the reading and writing have a shared foundation. They're one and the same. Vocabulary is in the reading, it's in the writing. Logical organization goes in the reading and the writing. That top level structure is in the author's intent that's transferred. And if you can show the students how to take advantage of that, then they can write with that top level structure as well, because it presents a powerful organizational structure for what they're trying to convey. The gist of key ideas or main idea. And I separated that out from the central idea and controlling idea because that's what the writing people want to talk about as central ideas and controlling ideas. They're one and the same. They're all the same thing. So if I'm trying to persuade you, or you are asking a fourth grader to write a persuasive essay convincing me that fourth grade was your best year ever, then you could write a main idea that says, or a controlling idea that says, fourth grade was my best year ever because of my teacher, the new games I played, and my new friends I made in school. So now I've given the three causes for my best year being fourth grade, and I use that in my introductory paragraph, and then I expand upon the three reasons in the essay that I'm writing, and then I bring it back again to restate it differently in my ending, where I actually use that same main idea in the what I used in reading, but now in writing. And throughout this process, as I've shown you, evidence and examples go right after that main idea. So that whole process is very tightly woven together, and a very knowledgeable teacher is able to continuously make those connections and integrate the reading and writing, not taught as a completely separate activity after the fact at a different time, but instead throughout this process, it's integrated. So now let's look at the CAT framework again, but this time around, I'm going to talk about it from the point of view of readers read what writers write, how you enable strong writers using the CAT framework. So we've pre-taught the vocabulary. It's essential for writing, knowing where and when to use the words. Practice using the words in writing, short constructed responses, main ideas, summaries, and extended constructed responses. The more we can help children write, the better off they'll be. And all of these activities are formal writing activities. Writing a main idea is formal. Writing a summary is a formal activity. Short constructed responses is what you do, as I said, as an exit ticket or as the mechanism by which you give them a quiz. Your state level tests are constantly putting those types of questions for the student to respond to. So, and if you want to write an essay, extended constructive responses, all of them require the student to apply that vocabulary. And by pre-teaching it, what you're doing is allowing the student to see it and use it multiple times, multiple ways, and that imprints that vocabulary in their brain for a very long term. So we've read and listened. But remember, I said when we're reading with prosody. That means we're reading and stopping after the period, making sure we call attention to those signals or maybe some of the subheadings, instead of formally having some bizarre set of rules like, today we're going to look at all the subheadings. No, you are actually reading with prosody to guide that kind of thinking. And you emphasize those discourse markers, the signal words that people are putting in. Remember what I said. Oh, Cinderella is getting bullied because. So now we've got the cause for that. So these are very good points where you can actually draw the student into understanding it. That way they can apply it when they themselves write. And they're also then shown how to write a lot more sophisticated signal words than just saying my first reason is, my second reason is, my third reason is. You could say things like in contrast, because, due to. And so you're encouraging the child to read like that and then apply like that. And then once they know that these signals are powerful, as they write anything, you can ask them, what's the main idea of this passage that you just wrote? They should be able to figure out what they signaled and what they took out of it. That would make a powerful technique as a check and balance to connect this reading and writing connection. So classifying the text structure guides the thinking about the important text structure that was being used, and was there a problem? Was it solved? These are important ideas required for writing any type of answer. So the classifying the text structure is essential for both reading and writing. And a little example from Miss Sierra's classroom. Miss Sierra is one of our team members who got 100% pass rates for 10 years in a row before she came to work with us. She would put up a picture at the beginning of class while students were coming in and settling down so that it gives them something to do and not get into trouble. So the one day she put up a picture of a family at the beach, and one of the students said, "Oh, I think I will organize it as a problem and a solution that, oh, the dad was working too hard." And so one day the wife was complaining about it. So then they decided the solution would be to go take a beach vacation. And so then the child proceeded to organize the entire essay that the child was writing using the problem and solution text structure. And these were suggested by the students who had learned this technique for comprehension and were now applying it and able to use it in their writing. So this applies to short constructed responses, extended constructed responses, informational, persuasive, narrative writing. Narrative writing, for example, is extremely hard for a lot of students to do. You have to think of the characters, the plot, the theme, the setting. There's 100 things that they have to keep in their working memory. If you can organize it by what the huge problem was or something that was going to happen in the story, and then you start explaining the reasons why these were happening, and then how the problem was solved as part of the story, then you can write the bones of it and start extending and embellishing just like you do with the extension from main idea to a summary, where you have written that there's a big problem happening in the story. Jackie the eagle is got very sick. So now you start explaining how Jackie got sick and what her sickness looks like. All of those embellishments are part of that extension and evidence that you're providing to the story that you're writing. Now, this main idea is absolutely essential, as I've already pointed out, for not only your memory of the text, your very organized memory, but also for you to start writing answers with. Whether it's a short constructed response where you have to precisely get to the point, it may be somebody says, "What was the problem?" Or the answer might be something related to the causes. Whatever that short constructed response is, by leveraging that main idea, you're able to get directly into answering the question correctly as it was presented to you. Extended constructed responses require a lot more evidence to be supported, but bottom line is this main idea performs multiple roles. In comprehension, it goes in writing, it goes out. So it's encoding and decoding. You're able to actually bring it out when it's necessary. So you leverage the main idea I've already shared with you. If you're going to write why fourth grade is your best year ever, that becomes your controlling theme, that I'm going to tell you why fourth grade was my best year ever. It's because of my teacher, my soccer game, and my friends. So now you've got 3 reasons for the fourth grade being a good year. And that's your main idea, and that becomes your controlling idea for writing. It allows you to organize your writing and also has a way to end it by restating it differently. So you leverage this main idea for everything that you do, and that presents a powerful technique for students who otherwise would be now having to think of new ways to state things. This process of extending a main idea to a summary actually is what I said earlier, where in any writing that you do, even if you're applying for a job, and if you state, "I'm a highly qualified candidate," you need to be able to back it up with evidence. "I'm highly qualified because I've got 10 years of experience doing something. I'm highly qualified because I have a PhD." Whatever the point of reference might be, you need to back it up with evidence. It's the exact same process that we are following, that we want the child to apply in their writing. So evidence and examples and details all are extremely important to make your writing stronger. And children typically do have difficulty, because we used to write persuasive essays in our We Write platform that we built with Karen Harris and Steve Graham. And I can tell you that when we ask the students to provide evidence, they were often confused. They'd be like, evidence? But if you said, can you give me an example that tells you why this was good? Then it's a child-friendly language that it allows the student to understand what you mean. And so as they grow a little older, as they start using it more often, you can start switching things around and start calling it evidence. It starts getting a little bit more formalized. And then finally, when you are asked questions about the theme, about author's purpose, about character traits, all of these things are requiring the student to read between the line. What we do then is leverage that main idea to present concise answers. Evidence comes from the summary, or you can, sometimes they ask to be comparing two characters in the same passage or two characters in two different passages. Whatever it might be, you actually use, again, that text structure-based comparison that you're going to build. So I've got a few minutes here. I'm going to give you a little example. So here's California Condo. If you're going to teach this as part of a reading example, what we do is not only provide that for reading instruction, we follow it up immediately with writing activities that support the comprehension. And as I said, to us, writing activities begin with the vocabulary, the main idea, the summary, the inference. And so we are very, very intentional and focused on making sure that these are tightly connected. It's not some separate activity that, oh, today we're going to write an essay. No, everything plays together in the same time frame. So California Condo is a passage that we actually borrowed from the National Geographic. And I just use that as a powerful example. You can use much longer passages, but for example's sake, I'm just going to stick with this one today. It's a pretty simple passage to focus on. However, it's not simple for your third, fourth, even if you give this to a ninth grade student. They frequently engage in what I call embellishment form of main ideas, where they read and then they start just paying attention to arbitrary details. And then they'll say, oh, California. Yeah, we went to California. We went to see Disneyland. And the conversation just spirals out of control. Instead, we need to show them how to intentionally find the top level structure. So for that reason, we give them an introduction that says, today we're going to read about an animal that is fast disappearing. Let's figure out whether we find out why they're disappearing. So I'm hinting to the fact that there's going to be some whys in there. Why usually results in because answers. So there is a causal connection I'm alluding to. All right, what happened? Why did it stop sharing? That's very strange. Very strange. Okay. Unusual. All right. So before I teach this vocabulary, this passage, I will pre-teach a couple of vocabulary words. In this case, I'm just going to use one as an example, critically endangered. And so this, say with me, critically endangered, a classification that means that it's high risk. That means they're dying off. These means these animals are going to be gone forever. And that gone forever means extinction. That means they're not coming back. And so synonyms are severely threatened, almost extinct. Antonym is protected and safe or flourishing. That means they're doing really well. And we can give them a Spanish translation if necessary. And so we're also showing the variations in different forms of endangered so that the students are understanding what this means. This same term can be used in the main idea, should be used in any short constructive response, and be replayed and applied in everything that the student is doing. So let's read now the California Condor. The California condor, North America's largest bird, once ruled the American Southwest and California's coastal mountains. According to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the condor became critically endangered in the 20th century, one classification behind extinct in the wild. This sounds really serious. And there's my word that I pre-taught you, critically endangered. That means they're disappearing. The decline came from poaching, habitat destruction, and lead poisoning. So now I have the reasons why these birds are disappearing. It says the decline, that means the numbers were dropping. Remember, they're critically endangered. Came from, meaning this is what caused it, poaching, habitat destruction, and lead poisoning, as condos scavenged for birds containing lead shots. So now, if I were to ask you, what do you think the text structure here is? It surely looks like there's a problem or an effect here, which is they're becoming critically endangered. Do we know the reasons why? Yes, we do. There are three reasons stated. Now, do they explain any solutions? No, they don't. So therefore, let's stay with the cause and effect text structure. So now we are able to write with a sentence stem and do it in about a minute or less. Early on in the academic year, you will be modeling this yourself and writing it on the board, and the students will copying it. After about 6 weeks, the students will start independently doing this themselves, and you will walk around and check. So here's our main idea. The causes are poaching, habitat destruction, and lead poisoning. The effect is that condor became endangered. So we have the main idea written and wrapped up in a bow without any overthinking or any embellishment. We are looking at the passage and getting the main idea directly from it without trying to go into a whole lot of other areas that are not related. So immediately after that, we do a multiple choice version of this, which kind of reinforces what this main idea is. So answer choice A, condos once ruled California mountain. That is in the text, but that's just a detail. Poaching and lead poisoning. Now it's giving us two reasons, and it tells us it led to the decline again. There's that word decline of the condor. We see that two reasons and an effect is given. This potentially looks like a good answer choice, but let's keep reading. Lead poisoning happens when condor eats a bird that contains a lead shot. Yes, that information is in the text, but that doesn't give us the full main idea. And endangered is one step away from extinct. We've gone over this multiple times. It's just a detail. So therefore, the correct answer is B, which provides two of the causes and an effect. Remember, in our main idea, we had three causes and an effect, but the bottom line is we are able to switch things around and come up with better answer choices. So the next step is we're going to take this main idea and add supporting evidence. You can call it examples if you want. But now what I've done here is after each of the parts of the main idea, the causes are poaching, habitat destruction, and lead poisoning. Now I'm giving an example and evidence. Condos scavenged for birds with lead shots. That's how they were getting lead poisoning, remember? So that presents a good example to support that part of it. You could take habitat destruction, but there isn't that much information from the text. So the student would have to come up with something themselves about how maybe a lot of the trees are being cut down, or there are forest fires that are burning the trees. So whatever it might be, you could provide additional examples. The effect is the condos became endangered. So now we want to embellish on that. We want to actually provide extra evidence. This is one classification behind extinct. That sounds really serious. And so that makes a good example to extend the main idea to a summary. So now we are going into this writing part of the activity where we take that information, we leverage that main idea, and we now go into short constructed responses. The first question is tying in local information. So if you are in Vermont, you could take an animal that's getting endangered in Vermont and then provide a passage to the students, and they read the California condor, the Vermont passage, and then you say black-footed ferret is critically endangered in Texas. Urban development has eliminated most of the burrows. how are the black-footed ferret and the California condor similar? So now you are able to create a comparison between if you write a main idea for the black-footed ferret and a main idea for the condor, now you have the information necessary about how these are similar and different. What solutions can we propose to the condor? So now we can say something like, we need to eliminate lead shots because they are killing the condors. So you have like direct answer choices that are sitting inside your main idea and the summary that can be leveraged to directly answer short constructive responses. What other animals may be affected by the habitat destruction? Similar to number one. What is the definition of the word decline? Present text evidence to support. Remember, in our main idea, we had decline. And so we are able to leverage that conversation. So we are able to leverage that main idea to answer directly. The decline says that it is something that's going down, the population is going down, and what do we have as evidence from the text? We directly state that in there. So again, going back to this shared foundation, we have covered how vocabulary is helpful. The word decline, endangered, all of these things are being tied in and being applied in the writing. And then the logical organization allows you to think like that and respond accordingly. And if you actually know the main idea of whatever text you're reading in preparation for writing, then you are able to get at the important information that you want to share. A lot of times when you're giving students passages to read in preparation for writing, the students really don't have a way of actually going after the most important information. They tend to find irrelevant information to cite or to use in their writing. So what this allows you to do is, as they're reading something, they generate the main idea. And in that main idea is the important information and the logical connections that can be your controlling idea for the writing. And in that extension to the summary, you are then taking the main idea and providing evidence and examples to extend it. So what this allows you to do is it anchors your thinking in the main idea. What is the text about? How is it held together? And then you're able to anchor the reading and writing and apply it in all content areas. This is very, very important in science, in social studies, in ELA, in all of the classrooms. The students need to be applying this. If you're teaching high school or AP World History, we have shown how you can take any historical event, write main ideas for that, and then present textual evidence and respond to some literary critique or information about author's purpose in that writing. So short constructed responses require you to directly answer the question accurately. Many times students do not read the prompt. They tend to just gloss over it and just look at it a little bit. But if they actually underline what the question is asking, then they immediately go back to the main idea and find a way to respond by leveraging that main idea. And in the process of providing text evidence, they do the exact same process that we do from extending the main idea to a summary. So I'm going to quickly finish through this. We identified the text structure, generate the main idea, created a summary, answer the prompts, select relevant evidence from the summary, explain how the evidence supports the answer. And this allows the student to be systematic and be very efficient and effective. The end of the conversation is that they need to be precisely answering the question and nothing else. So I'm not going to give you the whole examples that I had worked out here, but I wanted to end on this note, which is that the vocabulary is essential, logical organization is essential for both reading and writing. Top level structure is essential for both reading and writing. The gist, the main idea, the central idea, all of them are the foundation of both reading and writing, and evidence and examples are also the foundation of reading and writing. So on that note, it's exactly 9:45. I'll give you 10 minutes to ask questions and I'm happy to answer them. We have a wealth of information about a whole lot of other genres, but I just thought I'll share this and we will take it from there.
I think there's a couple questions that are a little bit related. One of them was, does main idea take the place of the gist? And then another one says that think SRSD promotes gist statements, and which are more who, what, did what, when, where, why, what happened. Do you think the main idea statements are better than the gist statements?
All right. So I'm not, that I know what I know about what we do. For us, the gist and the main idea are one and the same. We do not say gist, main idea, central idea, controlling idea, they're all one and the same in our CAT framework. And the evidence that I'm sharing with you with 100% pass rates and very, very high writing scores, if you actually do that, then you have to follow these 6 steps exactly in that same order. So if somebody else has a solution out there, then you need to ask them what evidence they have. Don't ask me what evidence they have, because all I can share is the evidence that I have for our CAT framework, which is those 6 steps, not taken out of context, not just arbitrarily written up, not using sentence stems just independently. This is not a mix or match. If you want to get the success that we are able to promise you, then it has to be our framework with that order. Having said that, again, I need to reiterate the gist, main idea, key idea, central idea, controlling idea, they're all exactly the same in our book. And one of the reasons for our success is that we keep it that structured and systematic for all genres of text all the time. I know that adults love to debate, the English language. Well, is it a key idea or is it a central idea? I'm really sorry, but to me, it makes no difference. Debating those things are a huge waste of time, especially in the instructional role for the classroom. The students benefit from streamlined, systematic processes. And once they have established this really strong foundation, then they can go to town doing other things. But before that, it's not appropriate to throw at them 15 different ideas for this, that, and everything else. We absolutely tell you never to use the who, what, when, where, but. It's just completely nonsensical, has no rhyme or reason. Do not use beginning, middle, and end, no rhyme or reason. Completely, actually, the evidence that these things don't work are sitting right in front of you and have been there for 40 years. This is what has been used for 40 years until we came along and changed the narrative for the children and the teaching. So I'm very confident in the approach that we're using, and the approach we're using is those 6 steps. So, but thanks for the question. Yes. So.
There's also a question about the text structures part and
Mhm.
wondering how sentence or main idea stems for description or sequence text, if that where that falls.
Uh-huh. Yes, this comes up all the time. We don't write main ideas for description or sequence text. We never do that. Description and sequence are nested inside all higher order text structures, and they are to be treated as less important information always. So in our PD last week, somebody was showing up showing us a sample passage from a Pennsylvania test that talked about claymation or something. It's about how you can make clay little animations that then are videotaped and then strung together as a movie. And so they actually set it up almost like a recipe. And so they have a sequence that you must follow this, this, and this. And then they ask the student, what's the main idea? But actually, the real correct answer to that is that if you do something, you create a very entertaining movie. So it's a cause and effect at that overall level. And then the sequence of events to achieve that effect is actually just the sequence that's embedded inside. And I also need to call attention to the fact that many state standards, unfortunately and horribly, emphasize sequence at the early grade levels, pretending like children are not capable of doing higher order thinking, when in fact, cause and effect is what all children thrive on. When they're born, they know if they cry, they get fed. If they know they cry, they get their diaper changed. This is an instinctive causal relationship that they are tuned into. And I've always given the example that if you're driving a child somewhere, they'll be sitting in the back seat, 5, 6, 4 years old. Why are we going to grandma's house? Why can't Susie come over? Why can't we have movie night tonight? And all your answers start with because. So children in kindergarten, first grade, second grade are more than capable of doing causal relationships. But in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, sometimes all the way up to third grade, your state will say, well, make sure they put it in a sequence. Make sure they put, Cinderella in a sequence. Make sure you put Itsy Bitsy Spider in a sequence. And then the children are just unlearning their causal relationships, which is, by the way, the higher order thinking. And then you're kind of training them to do this really worthless retell approach of going in a sequence. And then they come to fourth grade and then everybody is in a tizzy because children can't do higher order thinking. And look how badly they are doing after you trained them out of what they already knew. So I'm very adamant that sequence and description are never to be taught for a main idea. In the classrooms that we support, we never, ever use sequence or description to anything but to tell the students they are supporting details and they're embedded and nested inside everything. When I use the Cinderella example, I do that on purpose because if I say what was Cinderella's problem, the majority of even adults will tell me, oh, she lost her shoe. Why are they misled? Because there's whole 2 chapters about the shoe. Okay, so if you keep writing descriptive information to be that entertaining, it is bound to mislead people. And one of the things that it does is unfortunately misleads young children into believing that those details in the description and the details in the dates are what's important. During our PD, I always share a passage. Historical passages are full of dates. In 1943, this happened. 1948, this happened. 1956, this happened. And then within each paragraph, there's causal relationships happening about the gold rush, about the wars, about this, about that. And then the students are just writing dates and putting down what event happened instead of thinking why it happened. So it is really important for people who really want to do a good job of training for comprehension and for high quality writing to get away from the sequence and the description.
As a piggyback on that, somebody asked the lowest grade that you've used this framework with, and I'm assuming it's kindergarten since you just said kindergartners are readily able to do.
Absolutely. We've got young children in preschool that are now starting to use this, where, all you have to do is ask the why question. We always start with Itsy Bitsy Spider. So why did the spider get washed out? Oh, it's because of the rain. Oh, got it. These little itty bitty kiddos can get it. They really get it. And when you say the word, what was the problem? They love it. And so why not take advantage of this? I have yet to meet a child at any age who's not understanding this. So we do implement this in kindergarten. It is sort of difficult, complicated conversation with principals of schools and administrators who want to stick very tightly with the state standards. But I keep telling people, if you want higher scores in fourth and fifth grade, you better start very young and keep doing the right thing. If you want to just teach them wrong things from kindergarten to third grade and expect miracles in fourth grade, that is going to be very difficult to achieve.
And then someone has asked about where they can learn more, and I did provide the IO website. But are there any? Are there books? And I know you mentioned you gave us some articles in one of your slides. Anyway, if you could just elaborate on how people can learn more.
So there are multiple options. One is we have the book called The Joy of Reading. It's available on Amazon. If you look up Joy of Reading and my last name, you will find it. Then we have events called the CAT Institute. We had one in Michigan sponsored by the Michigan Reading League this summer. We had one here in Texas. Then we had one online through the Reading League National. And so we will be having those events throughout the year as we go on. Then our website that Brenda just posted for the resources. There are videos in there that actually I present the whole development of the CAT framework as well as some of the evidence. We also have something called the First Thursday Cat Chat, which is on the first Thursday of the month during the school year. Our first one will be in September. It's at 4 p.m. Central Time, which would be 5 p.m. your time. It's 1 hour where we allow teachers to share their application of the CAT framework and answer questions. And that way we build a community of practice that is a very positively oriented system to develop the skills and implementation. So we have those resources, and join us for our journey.
Thank you.
And we'll be at the Reading League meeting presenting. We will have a booth at the Reading League too. So.
Oh, great. And then I think we have time for one last question. The question says, people use who, did, what, when, and where to teach syntax. Any advice on syntax instruction?
Right. We don't do that. I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to elaborate too much because syntax, for us, when we teach with this frame of reference about what's the problem, why did it happen, how was it solved, or comparison, those types of text structures. As I said, we don't use the who, what, when, where, but. We don't use that at all. We actually tell teachers stop doing that when we teach the CAT framework. And then going back to the syntax is good, but the organization and the ideation that goes behind the writing, right? The ideas that you're going to present need to come from that main idea and that summary that you had written. So once you establish the ideas and the connections between the ideas, then the next step is to actually include those signals so that the reader who's reading your answer can get an understanding of what you're trying to convey. Now, after all that is done, then you can go back and revise for syntax. And that is where I like to make sure that students are using some of that time to, make sure that capitalization is correct and those kinds of things, and the commas and so on and so forth. Because there's no point in putting a comma on a non-existent, worthless sentence. So sometimes people want to front load that, and our goal is to make sure that they have the ideas right, the organization right, the signals right, and then we can talk about syntax after the fact. And remember, those types of syntactual things are like students will get extremely frustrated, and there are so many rules, and you're going to overload their working memory by emphasizing the wrong thing at the wrong time. And what I mean by that is emphasizing the syntax too early and too often is the wrong thing at the wrong time. We need them to have the correct ideas first and then be able to organize it before they start doing all kinds of things. And remember, in our reading with prosody, we are emphasizing that. So we are cluing them into that, but we're not going to bring it back until they have got their ideas down in the main idea and the summary. There's no point. I mean, we as adults need to know what to give to the students and when to give it, not just keep arbitrarily taking a whole bunch of things. Okay, let's do this. And I mean, the kids are like so confused. They're looking at you like, what is she talking about? And some kid might have had great ideas, but then didn't put that down in writing because they're so worried about how to spell the word, how to put a comma, and so on and so forth. But that's an excellent question. So,
Yeah. All right. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. This was absolutely fantastic, Dr. Wijekumar. I always enjoy listening to you and learn something new every time. And I just want to put in a plug because Nancy Eberhardt is attending this presentation, and she will be speaking along with Margie Gillis next Tuesday for our last session. So if you want to learn more, and now Nancy's listened to this, so hopefully she'll be able to put this in some kind of context for you if you're still wondering how to combine syntax instruction with writing instruction using the CAT procedure. So, and that if you want to come is you need to sign up for each webinar. You need to sign up for separately. So if you want to attend that syntax one next week, just go to where you signed up for this one and register again. So thank you again, and thank you everyone for attending. And a reminder, today at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, we will be listening to Dr. Stephen Graham talking about writing, and especially one of his topics will be explicit handwriting instruction. So hope to see a lot of you there this afternoon. And I think that's it. So thanks again. Bye-bye.
bye.